Hi, Filipina wife abroad here. Today, I'm going to talk about something that doesn't get much discussion, but should. It's about the dreaded prenup and the prenup discussion. So, this discussion takes on its own unique flair when it's between a Filipina and a Westerner. But let me tell you first a short story about a friend of mine before jumping into our main discussion today. My friend came to the US on her K1 visa, and she was very happy with her husband and their situation. Then a few days before their wedding, her future husband approached her with the prenup document. Now she had very little knowledge of what the prenup is and didn't understand what she was being asked to sign. Now, her future husband did a brief explanation of why the prenup was important to him, his adult children, and their future family. So, my friend at the time didn't want to create problems. So, after briefly reviewing the document, which didn't make any sense to her, she signed it and just forgot about it. Now that she's lived in the US for several years, and now she's a US citizen, she's developed resentment, towards her husband, for forcing her to sign this document without recommending to her to get her own legal counsel, and also encouraging her to add her own needs into the document before it was signed. So, guys, what we're going to talk about today is how to have that prenup discussion from both the Westerner perspective and also the Filipino perspective, and also how to minimize the resentment that may result if not handled properly. Well, of course, I'm not a lawyer, and any information that I share with you now is strictly just my own opinion, gathered from my discussions, with my Filipino cohorts in the U.S. and discussion with their husbands, and also my husband. So, for the Filipinas watching, this video right now, a prenup is an agreement that a husband and a wife signed prior to getting married. It dictates how a divorce will be handled in regards to assets, pensions, debts, spousal support, in miscellaneous items, like your pets, cars, and any sentimental items. It's very common in Western societies where divorce is also common. And for the Americans or Westerners watching this video, well, the prenup is not common in the Philippines since, divorce is not legally permissible in my country. In general, people are married for life and they have very little assets before, they get married. So there's never a need to have a prenup. Now, the only time I'd ever been exposed to prenups were in movies and TV, and it was almost always related to the man requesting the prenup and not a woman. I really sympathize with the Filipinos having to deal with this issue because, many don't understand, the ramifications and how to engage in a constructive prenuptial agreement with, their future husbands. Most Filipinas want to have a harmonious marriage, and will avoid conflict. I believe it's what all the women desire, right? So this might surprise you, but 99% of the Filipinas will sign the prenup without pushback. And it usually will not be any issue in the short term, but in the long term, it can lead to regret and resentment. The 1% that will push back and refuse to sign any prenup is probably not the woman you want to marry, but that doesn't make her a bad person or a bad woman. It's just women have different principles. So, guys, how can you avoid resentment or problems prior to your marriage and still have a prenup successfully signed? Well, the process has to begin with an open dialogue and an effort on the future husband's part, to educate his future wife on, discussing what the prenup is and encouraging her to do her own research prior to just presenting her with the documents and just telling her to, hey, you sign. The future husband should make it abundantly clear that she should seek her own legal counsel, to better understand the document, and if needed, he will pay for the legal counsel. Since he is asking for the prenup, he should pay for her lawyer as well. Now, he should also encourage her to make, this arrangement a win-win settlement. Guys, as I mentioned before, the husband will expect protection, in case of divorce for his assets acquired prior to marriage, particularly if he has, a business, properties, or children from a prior relationship that he's trying to protect. Now, the Filipina, if she obtains legal counsel, will often ask for the document, to insulate her from debts acquired prior, to marriage, and also support her and children from her previous marriage and any properties in the Philippines. Now, several of my friends mentioned that if they had to do it over again, they would include a few important terms and conditions in the prenup agreement that might help you consider if ever you decide to marry your Filipina. Like, they said, they must have their allowance when they don't work, and also reassurance that continuing their education would be paid. Also, some of them said a legal support in case of your divorce, and also avoid the entire prenup in case of the infidelity on your part. But guys, the most important thing is, for both parties to be clear, transparent, and neither party has the undue influence on the other. Making sure both parties have access to good lawyers. Both parties need to treat each other with love, and, making sure that you address each other's concerns in a win-win manner. Do not assume that a Filipina who signs a prenup without proper support will be okay with it. No, because in the long run, a signed prenup done the wrong way may cause more problems than no prenup at all. Well, guys, for those who are curious about our case, we didn't have a prenup. My husband protected his key assets before our marriage, and he didn't think it was worth the trouble, and I was passive at the time and never brought it up. This was a mistake, and we should have at least had that discussion. All right, guys, so that ends our topic for today. I hope to see you again in a week. I really appreciate that you give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more, interesting topics about Filipina and American relationships, particularly here in the US. All right, thank you so much for watching. Bye. See you next week.